All right, everyone. Welcome and thank you for attending the Sales Enablement Stack webinar. My name is Jared Fuller, and I'll kind of be emceeing and getting you guys rocking and rolling today. So today, we're going to be going over how to optimize your B2B funnel with Sales Enablement. On the line and on the webinar today, we have some awesome people who are going to help you out and develop those best practices. We have Justin McGill, who's the founder and CEO of LeadFuse. You can follow him on Twitter. Ask us any questions. Kevin Romani, who's the head of sales for Close.io, and myself, Jared Fuller, VP of Partnerships here at PandaDoc. So what is Sales Enablement? Well, let's set the stage. Sales Enablement is the processes, practices, the tech, and content that help improve the performance and productivity of the sales organization. So today, we're going to be taking you from top to bottom of the sales funnel. So at the top, we have outbound and demand generation. So that is outbound emails to generate new prospects, get them interested, and Justin's going to be talking about some best practices for subject lines and sequences. For CRM and sales operations, Kevin Romani is going to be talking about how to qualify a prospect that might have responded positively to one of those emails. And then when they fall off, how to follow up, how to get them back on the line and get them engaged and interested. And then myself, Jared, I'll be talking a little bit about document automation and how to tie this entire funnel back together. So how to propose and how to close. So with that, I'm going to kick things off to Justin so he can jump in and get us rocking and rolling with the Sales Enablement Stack webinar. So Justin, let me pass the baton off to you.
All right. That's my my Matthew McConaughey impersonation. So thanks, Jared. So I don't have a whole lot of time today, so we're just going to dive right in. I want to keep this as insightful and actionable as I can for you. So no fluff from me today. First things first, I'm going to show you some really interesting research on subject lines just to help you get more opens. And then I'll kind of share some, basically a very simple cold email formula that, well, it just flat out works. So you'll be able to apply that to your own cold emails, get more responses. I'll share some examples, both good and bad, of cold emails. And then, of course, I'll mix in some good old sales-related memes along the way. In fact, we'll get started with one. So since I don't have a lot of time today, I'm going to assume you already have a list of prospects, or else you know at least how to build a list of prospects to contact. So what I want to focus on today is basically how to communicate to a cold list of prospects. We'll start off with that all-important subject line. I am going to kind of go through these relatively quickly. It's just, going to kind of spring some subject line data on you. Please make some mental notes here. Essentially want to get to the meat and potatoes of the messaging. So again, I'm going to kind of slide through these pretty quick. Just because I'm going through these quickly, though, I don't want to underscore how important your subject line is in getting results with your cold emails. This one in particular, I think, it probably makes a little more sense in an email marketing setting, but the results were so impressive, I wanted to include it anyway, just so you could maybe look for opportunities to test that in your particular case yourself. Not too surprisingly, the top 5 subject lines all include RE, as in a reply. So typically, I always include my previous emails in my follow-ups. Helps the reader kind of be able to quickly refer back to that original email if needed, and then it kind of hints that there were previous email correspondence taking place here. So that's why these are so effective. And then using like their name or their company is certainly a great way to improve your open rates as well. I know Kevin has some interesting data there, and so when he kind of talks on this, he's got a really interesting subject line that he's been testing that's worked really well. But ultimately, if all else fails, you can go with no subject line altogether. So it'll probably be a little bit of an improvement over what currently. Obviously, getting them to open the email is half the battle, but once you get them to open the email, your goal is to start a conversation. There seems to be a major disconnect here when it comes to cold emailing. I've heard from people that think they should be closing leads and deals from cold emails, not just generating conversations. But when you're cold emailing, all you're trying to do is pique their interest just enough so that they'll listen to what you have to offer. Unfortunately, I see so many cold emails trying to come right out and sell everything under the sun, hoping that one of the 10 things that they offer will resonate. And I get that you're excited about what you offer and you feel like you can help your prospects, but ultimately you have to be very concise. Otherwise, you start sending an email that looks like this. This was actually shared by Jill Conrath on her blog. This is not a natural email, right? Like, you would not send this to a friend. You would not talk like this out loud. Why would you send something like this to a targeted, ideal, potential prospect? Right? Like, that person is not going to read that, not going to respond. So to help kind of keep your cold emails brief and to the point, I've come up with a framework that I call QVC, not the TV channel, but it is a helpful acronym just to remember when you're kind of putting together your own cold emails. And so that's what this stands for. Okay, you want to try and lead in with a quick hitting question. Oftentimes I see emails start off with some sort of introduction about themselves, right? I've actually heard sales gurus actually recommend introducing yourself initially, but the problem is you're essentially saying, hi, you don't know me, but, right? Like, ultimately you want to lead in with a question that piques their interest. Keep in mind that this is what they're going to see in their preview panes, in their email client, on their smartphone. This might be all they see. So you want that question to pique their interest here. And then from there, you can go into the value prop. Okay, you can ideally 1 to 2 sentences. I mean, 3 at the absolute max, but ideally 1 to 2 sentences. If you feel like you want to introduce yourself, now would be the time. But essentially, you want to minimize words like I and we and replace them with the word you, so that way you can kind of more so focus on the benefits. And then last is the close. So ideally, you want this to be a question as well. The question should be something that's easy to respond to. And I'll explain why basically any response is a good response, but I'll explain that in a bit. So I guess with that said, let's go ahead and dive into like an example that I'm sending right now on behalf of LeadViews. So this is a screenshot. I'm including the statistics as well, because this way it gives you kind of a barometer to use with your own cold emails. Typically anything over 30% is pretty good. So right now, this is what I'm testing. You can see it's not personalized subject line, right? Yet, there's a 45% open rate here. So, I've tested quite a bit. This is the one I'm testing right now, and it's performing pretty well. But really, I want to kind of focus on the content here. So you can see this is the QVC in action, right? I lead off with the question, a couple sentences on the value prop, and then close with another question. That closing question's easy to respond to. It's yes or no, right? Again, any response is a good response, and the reason that is because it helps show engagement. And so when you have that engagement level high, it helps your future deliverability. So even if they say, F off or screw you, believe me that you're going to get some of those if you're doing it enough. That's a good response, right? Well, it's not a good response, but it's good that they responded. Okay, so below this, it's cut off here, but it's my signature. Okay, so there's a couple of things happening here from a canned spam standpoint, and there's going to be a link in the resources section at the end of this webinar that kind of talks about all of that, but very, very easy to follow. But one of those things is having your business address in your email. So I include that in the subject line. Comes off naturally that way. And then secondly, at the very bottom, you'll see the PS line. Okay, so I'm asking to potentially be referred to someone else, but also it kind of ends with, if you'd rather I not follow up, you can let me know that too. And so this is a pretty magical PS line. I would recommend that you not use this word for word. I've seen people kind of rip this off, and I've actually been sent cold emails that have the PS line that I use and showcase, but essentially what's happening here is, you can get a response if it's somebody else, but also you'll get a response saying, please unsubscribe or take me off your list or whatever. Well, the beautiful thing about that is they're still responding, right? So that, again, that helps your engagement rates. You do not have to include an unsubscribe link. Okay, that's a big misnomer with cold emailing. Everyone feels like you need to include an unsubscribe link. You just have to have a way for people to opt out of receiving future emails. Okay, so now if people do respond and they say, take me off your list, obviously you want to make sure that you don't include them in your follow-ups. Okay, hopefully most of you are using follow-ups. Unfortunately, a lot of people are not. In particular, you should have roughly 5 total emails at least in your sequence. Okay, you can go beyond that for sure, but you at least want 5. Here's some statistics that kind of back that up. Unfortunately, only 2% of current sales processes right now are reaping the sales of 80% of their leads. But I will say, when you do follow up, you do not want to send something like this. Okay, this is an email I received recently, and it totally misses the mark here, right? Just for fun, I actually responded to this, and I said, yes, I'd love to call you and be sold whatever it is you're selling. And then he naturally followed up and was really excited about lining up that next call. But generally, this is kind of the follow-up that I will send. And it's, again, I just want to keep this short and sweet. It's a simple question, and that is it. So it's obvious what I want them to do next, which is to respond yes, no, whatever. But also you'll notice at the top here in the subject line, I'm including the RE, right? So basically what I'm kind of replicating here is going and finding the email that was sent, using like a reply all, and then adding this new message to it. And it's helpful for them, obviously, because they'll be able to kind of go back and refer to that previous email. Now, I do just kind of want to touch on something real quick, because I am including my first email in this thread. I don't have to have another opt-out in this email, because it is technically in the email at the bottom of the email, right? Because that was the PS line is at the bottom. So if you do not include your previous emails, you will need to include some sort of an opt-out in every email that you send. This is the type of follow-up that I see all of the time. I get this almost on a daily basis from somebody, which is the typical like checking in type emails. The problem with this is you're not bringing any value, right? So what do I mean by value? Some examples might be you want to include a recent case study. Maybe you want to link them to a relevant blog post that you just put together. There's a number of things you can do. Maybe address objections that they're already having. Maybe you've hammered home a couple, like one key feature repeatedly, right? Well, now would be a really good time to maybe switch gears and focus on a different benefit in a follow-up email. So with that said, here's my third follow-up email that I'm running with. You'll see that I link to a blog post here. In addition, it kind of closes with a slightly different variation here, and so I'm giving them kind of a time frame within the next week. This is for a couple reasons. Obviously, like it's a big time frame, so chances are there's some sort of availability in there. But secondly, I don't advise you being so specific. I mean, I've seen people say, does Wednesday at 10 a.m. or 12:30 p.m. work for you? Right? Like the problem is you're alienating them if it doesn't work for them, right? So just kind of keeping it open is pretty helpful here. And then here's the next email that I'll usually run with. You'll see that I include a case study this time. This helps them visualize results that they can bring. It brings credibility to what it is that you're offering. I know, we have Jared from PandaDoc talking today, right? You can use their system to actually track, when this gets opened or how long they've been reading your case study, which makes for a really good time to call that prospect when they're looking at your case study. So, ultimately, you can do a couple of things, right? Your goal here with the final email, real quick, is just to basically get them to respond, but switch gears a little bit. So this is kind of like a breakup email. You'll see I changed the subject line as well. So typically what you'll see is over time, when you in your email sequence, the open rates gradually decrease. So changing it up on the last email I've seen helps really well. Again, test this out with your own sequence, but this also kind of has a breakup tone to it, like I'm not going to send another email to you. Kevin actually is going to share a really good breakup email version as well that works for opportunities, but you can also kind of have a variation of that works really well for cold email prospects. So ultimately, test. Again, I want to kind of leave with this, which is your goal from a cold email is simply to start a conversation, okay? And then that takes you to that next stage. you can start qualifying that opportunity and nurturing them. And I know Kevin's going to talk about that as well. So I guess I'll wrap it up here. Happy to answer any questions now, or I guess even at the end of this webinar as well.
Hey, Justin, it sounded like we had a question from the audience asking about a Calendly link in that email you were showing. Does that sound like something that is valuable to have people pick time on your calendar, or is that too much of an effort and make you look bad? What are your thoughts on that?
Love Calendly, actually. So that is a really good idea. You typically want to limit the number of links that you have in your emails because that's going to throw up some red flags and lower your open rates if you have multiple links. But if that's the only link in your email, love that idea. I use Calendly myself. It's a helpful tool. Makes it super easy.
Yeah, great tool as well. I certainly use it. Another question just came in from Russell. So how long between emails do you typically wait during your sequences? Like, what's a good kind of cadence of time?
Yeah, great question. So by default, I usually stick with 3 days. Now, this can change, dramatically, and I would recommend testing this. One idea might be to kind of start off heavy, so maybe it's every single day, you're sending a follow-up, and then maybe after 2 or 3, you kind of span that out to, a 3-day or 4-day delay. Maybe you're calling in between, not just cold emailing, right? So you can then in your cold call, you can reference the email correspondence that you've had, kind of warms that up just a little bit. And then maybe after 5, 6 emails, if you want to keep following up with them, you can kind of spread that out every 2 weeks, maybe even once a month. You have a sequence to kind of check in. Again, you should be using some sort of a tool, even if it's not lead views, but something that allows them to automatically be removed if they do respond. So that way, you're not sending them just continuous emails when they've asked to be removed, right? But if they haven't responded, right, like you can continue to send them emails. I mean, don't be afraid to continue that conversation.
Awesome. Well, we had another question come in. We're going to save that one to the end. It's a great question. I think both Kevin and Justin, you'll be able to throw in to that one. So we have Bethany here who saved that. Let's go ahead and jump in with Kevin. So Kevin, let's hear about the next step in the Sales Enablement Stack.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. If you could just confirm for me, you can see the presentation screen.
Yep, I see your beautiful mug there, Kevin.
Awesome. So hey guys, my name is Kevin. I run sales as well as customer success here at Close.io. If you don't know about Close.io, we are a sales CRM. We're particularly designed for inside sales teams. The thing that makes us different is that we have built-in calling and built-in two-way emails so that salespeople can send more emails, make more calls, and spend more time selling and less time doing data entry. That's as much as I'm going to plug the product. I'm going to get right into helping you guys qualify. So, Justin was talked and gave some really great advice on how to, basically get prospects into the funnel. But now, once they're in the funnel, what you want to do is you want to qualify them. Now, Justin mentioned that I had a couple of ideas on cold emails for prospecting. I do. One of the things that works really well for me, I'm not that creative of a person, so whenever I struggle to come up with a really great subject line, and I can't come up with one, I always default to one simple rule. And that is use my company's name as the subject line. So if I were sending a cold email from Close.io, my subject line would just simply say Close.io. Or if I send an email from PandaDoc and I was a salesperson there, then it would just say PandaDoc or LeadFuse. This technique has consistently worked well for me and has brought me anywhere between 35 to 40% open rates on those emails. So if you guys are struggling to come up with a good subject line, sometimes it's easy just to use your company name. And what that does is it incites curiosity in people to want to know a little bit more about what that email even means. And you're also not misleading them by putting your company name, because you're really talking to them about your company and you're pitching your company. So having that as a subject line is a one alternate example besides the many great suggestions that Justin gave. All right, so qualifying, why do you qualify? What's the point? And how do you even do it? And why do you do it? So here's the thing. Once you get leads or prospects into your funnel, if you don't qualify, you're going to waste time. Qualifying is the act of really getting to know and understand and validate a prospect to see if there's a relationship possible, if there is even a good fit. And if there isn't a good fit, is to eliminate that prospect from your funnel so that you're not wasting time later. And if there is a good fit, to really truly identify the extent to which it's a fit so that you can help sell them better. And that's why you qualify. And that's why qualifying the right amount is key. And we're going to talk about what that means in this next slide. What does that mean, qualifying the right amount? Well, so here's the thing. A lot of the time salespeople waste, in fact, it's the biggest amount of time a salesperson is wasting once they're dealing with middle of the funnel. They're dealing with leads that were not properly qualified. You go through 3 or 4 stages of your sales process, and towards the very end of the thing, the deal is lost because something was unearthed that you realize, oh, this is no longer a qualified prospect, or this is no longer a deal, or their pricing is way off, or pricing expectations way off from what your expectation was, or what your pricing was, or their timeline or decision-making process is too long, or any number of, and there's hundreds and hundreds of possible ways that can go wrong, but that happens, and that causes a lot of pain, a lot of time and energy spent, and that's wasted. So take the extra time up front and qualify prospects the right way. And here's a quick guide to how to prospect, right? How to qualify a prospect. So the first one is the customer profile. What this really means is you need to know who you are selling to. You need to understand what the profile of that customer is. Are you an SMB? Are you selling to SMBs, or are you selling to enterprises? Who is the typical decision maker or group of decision makers? What are their titles? What is the typical budget that they have? What's the typical timeline that they make a decision on? And what typically does it take to sell these people? You need to know this first. You need to know the profile of your customer in order to sell them effectively. If your prospects are coming in and they're not matching your customer profile, you're going to spend a lot of time and energy and waste it, and you're not going to make many sales. This is a very simple concept, but a lot of people miss this. The second part about it is the needs. Now, every salesperson knows you got to understand whether the person needs your product or service. That's easy. What's not easy is to the extent to which you want to understand that. The process here at Close.io is that what we try to do is when somebody signs up for our product, and we're inbound only, so somebody signs up, prospect comes in, our job is to understand their sales process. We want to know everything about how you sell. Once we know about how you sell, only then can we decide, is Close.io a good fit for you? Similarly, if you're selling your product or service, understand the customers, not only their pain points, but how they do things in the context of your business, what they do, what they like, what they dislike about their existing tools, what are challenges they have, and what are their goals? Where do they want to go with your product, hopefully, or whatever product they're choosing? Where do they want to go? Understand them. And why you also need to understand them is that this makes them trust you more. When you take the time to ask a lot of detailed questions about their business and about their process, they're going to say, hey, this person understands me, and I can trust this person. I know that when this person turns around and gives me advice on what to buy, I can believe this person. And so that's why it's so important to take the time to take the extra questions, get in depth. You may be familiar with the concept of the 5 whys, right? Engineers use this a lot as a, if it is a feature request, you ask the question, why do you want this feature? And then the prospect might explain why they want a certain feature, what the explanation is. Then you want to ask another level of why do you have that need? And then when they explain why they have that need, you want to ask 5 whys, or you drill down to the very, very depth. You can learn this from engineers and apply this in this qualifying process in sales. Ask the 5 whys. Ask why they need something, why they decided that way, what's the goal, and what led them down this path. So that's on the needs. Once you get that understanding, they're going to trust you implicitly to give them the right advice. And you're going to know to give them the right advice. You're not going to make a mistake later. Now, understanding the decision-making process is key. This is another thing where salespeople miss out on. If you ask somebody what their decision-making process is, typically people give you a one-line answer. Oh, we're going to test it out for a few days, or we're going to, present it internally to our team, and then we're going to make a decision. Here's where there's an opportunity that is being missed. Most salespeople are satisfied with that first layer of answer, and then they move on. What you want to do is get one level deeper. You want to understand, all right, so once you present this to your team, do we have a deal? Oh, no, once we do that, typically you're going to get a few more layers of answers. They're going to say, oh, well, we need to then run it by our management team. Great. Okay, so once you present it to your team, they buy in. Then you present it to your management team. They're ready to, and they're giving their blessing. What's next? Do we have a deal at that point? Oh, no, our legal team needs to review. Oh, interesting. So your legal team needs to review it at that time. What are they going to be reviewing for? What are going to be some of their concerns? When do you think that they're going to have time to do it? How long does that typically take? All right. Once they've reviewed and accepted the deal, do we have a deal? No, then our board needs to approve it. Okay, when's the next board meeting? What are going to be their concerns? So the idea is to get deeper and deeper into that decision-making process so that it's not coming as a surprise. This is also a common mistake salespeople make, where they say the deal will expect to close, in a month, and a month later it's now going to the board meeting, or it's now going to the legal team, which will take 6 months to review, and suddenly a deal that was going to close in a month, now it's going to take 6 months to close. You want this visibility, and you can know this. You can know this by asking the right questions. So take the time to understand the decision-making process, and always ask, and always reconfirm. If they tell you the deal will be done in X time, or the process is X days or X months long, you want to reconfirm at the end of this process, if everybody said yes, do we have a deal? So that's a key thing in the qualifying process. And finally, you want to understand competition. Now this is a really good question, and if you ask it the right way, you're going to understand how to sell these people the right way. So if you ask, okay, what other tools or what other solutions are you considering besides us? And hopefully they're going to answer the question and tell you which tools they're considering. You can follow that question up with, so far, what is your impression of everything that's out in the market? Which do you prefer? How do we compare it to them in your mind? In this line of questioning, you're really getting to understand where their big objections are, what is really important to them, where do they really care, and where do you fall short compared to other tools. So this is a good way to get a better understanding that will help you close these deals better. All right, so that's how to qualify. Here's common mistakes salespeople make. We've talked about mistakes before, but here's things how you shouldn't qualify. So you shouldn't ignore incongruency. So a lot of times people will tell you, they want X, Y, and Z, but it's not congruent with their overall goal. So let's say a prospect says, hey, we want this solution to be scalable to hundreds and hundreds of people on our team. So let's say they're going to buy many, many, many licenses. But they only have 2 people in their startup, and they haven't raised any venture funding, and they don't have that many customers. Something's wrong here, right? Do they really need a tool to be highly scalable when they are only 2 people? Probably not. There's an inconsistency here. Or let's say they're telling you the entire part of the qualifying process that their biggest pain point is performance, that the performance is very, very low. And at the end of the process, they tell you the one thing that's going to help them make a decision is price. That doesn't make sense. Is price more important, or is performance? You can't get both sometimes. In fact, most times you can't get both. You can only get one. So which is it? Pick up on these incongruencies and address them. And the way to address it is just to ask. It's just, hey, help me understand. You mentioned this and as well as this. Which is more important? Which, how would you compare the two? How would you decide? Understanding that is going to help you prevent a lot of pain later. Context, not content. What does this mean? Well, you want to understand how somebody's saying something, not just what they're saying. So if someone tells you that they're very excited about buying your product, but they don't sound excited, they sound bored, there's something wrong here. People communicate in multiple ways. It's not just the choice of words they use, but also how they say things. Pay attention to that. Address that. If you feel like they're not sounding quite that excited, you can ask. You can say, hey, you don't have to say it directly or in a rude way. You can be polite. You can say, hey, I'm curious, you don't seem that excited about it, and I'm curious, is that, is there a reason for it? Is it you just having a bad day, or something has happened, or you're not 100% on board? These things will help you avoid catastrophes later. And address reluctance. So part of qualifying process is asking a lot of questions. What if the answers you're getting are really, really not specific? So you ask somebody, hey, how many users or licenses are you interested in? And they respond with a few. How long is the decision-making process? A few days. How quickly do you guys think we'll decide? Pretty soon. If they're giving you non-specific answers, and the more you press for details, the less specific they're getting, that is an incongruency. You want to spot that. You want to stop it. And a good technique to address this is to just stop the conversation and address the elephant in the room. Just go, hey, help me out here. I feel like you're not quite on board with, or you might not be seeing as much value in what I'm offering here that I think you guys are having. What is your thought? What is your opinion? Help me understand. And if you say it in a way with friendly strength, and if you want to understand what friendly strength means, there's a lot of great articles that we've written about friendly strength. Just go to blog.close.io and search for friendly strength. It's an attitude with which you can speak and be strong and yet friendly and polite. It'll help you understand what the problem is, what the true solution is. Maybe they don't trust you, and this will help you uncover that and address it and earn their trust, and then maybe you're going to be able to move this deal forward. So now, everything I've covered today, I've shared some materials at the end of the session with some links so you can access those materials and read more blog posts and learn more about it. We've done talks about this. We have webinars, blog posts, all sorts of good stuff. Now, once you have qualified somebody, now it's time to follow up. Now, this is something that most people who close deals do very poorly. People don't follow up nearly enough. Now, this follow-up is very different from the one Justin talked about. Now, what Justin was talking about was the cold follow-up, right? People that you're reaching out to that are that have never heard of you before, and you're pitching them for the first time. This follow-up is when you had a meaningful discussion with somebody, they have expressed interest, now you're following up to make the deal happen. This is a totally different beast. Here, you want to be relentless. You want to get your ego out of the way. You want to be consistent. You want to be precise, and you also you want to have the right attitude. So I'll cover what all that means here. So follow-up is the #1 way you can become somebody's priority. My very first deal I ever closed at Close.io took me 48 follow-ups, 48 calls and emails to follow up to close my very first deal. It got easier from there, but at the end of that 48th follow-up, the prospect told me, you know what, at first I thought that you were kind of annoying because you're following up so much, but then I thought you must really believe in what you're selling, and that's why I decided to go with you. And I have dozens of stories like this. Most people don't follow up nearly enough times. So to follow up is, first, stay friendly and nice. If people are ignoring you, that's because they're busy. They're not. If they tell you no, not interested, don't follow up anymore. You got a clear answer. But till you get a clear yes or no, you can follow up unlimited number of times. Be persistent, right? Be polite, be friendly. Assume they're busy, and just keep following up. Keep your follow-ups really, really short. And if you want to know what to put in those follow-ups, the best thing is make your first follow-up the same as every other follow-up. You can be, hey, I just want to follow up on our conversation last week. I'd love to move the deal forward, put context on whatever the deal was. Do you have time to chat this week? Or here's my Calendly. Let's book a call and let's chat. The next week you're going to follow up again, say the exact same thing, maybe tweak the words a little bit. The few days later you're going to follow up again, say the exact same thing. You can keep saying the same exact thing over and over again, because if you start to address the fact that they're ignoring you, that's a bad idea. Because once you start making them feel guilty or bad, they're never going to reply. Most people are not replying because they are busy. If they didn't want your solution, they would tell you. They're busy, other priorities take over, so just keep following up. Just assume they're busy, don't take it personally. Sometimes you can help provide value. So if you're reaching out to investors, or let's say you made an introduction to another founder or a CEO of a company, and he's going to give you advice. Now you're trying to book that meeting, and he agreed to meet with you, but you haven't been able to book a meeting. You're following up. Well, sometimes you might follow up and give a little piece of advice, or not a piece of advice, but maybe some input for them. You can say, hey, love to still meet up this week if you have some time. Here's my calendar, let's book a time. By the way, I would love to share with you something new we learned this week in our business, right? So sharing something, adding value can be helpful. But stay consistent, follow up as long as it takes, as many times as it takes. And I guarantee you, the person who stops first, which is if you stop following up, it's only because you are too uncomfortable following up. It's not because they might not be interested anymore. So follow-ups, and there's a great article on follow-ups that we have in the resources later. You can also use some great tools to stay on top of it. One of the tools I use is within Close.io, there's a little email checkbox. So I check a box to say, remind me in 3 days or 4 days, a week, if I don't hear back from this person, and then it reminds me and then I stay on top of it. There's some other great tools, followup.cc, let's see, maybe Boomerang. There's a number of great tools out there you could do the same thing with for email follow-up. So use some tools to your advantage so you don't have to remember. The tool will just remind you. You can use humor to elicit a response. I got we got this in a cold email one time where somebody was waiting for a response from an email. It kept following up, and one of the days they sent this little GIF in there, and it was really funny, and it made us want to respond to them. Again, keeping it friendly, keeping it funny, keeping it light was the technique that got them a response. If you have to stop following up at some point, if the value of the deal is not as big as the amount of time you're spending following up, you might consider a breakup email. This is a great example of a breakup email that HubSpot sent to us. And they told us, hey, we've been following up with you, but it doesn't seem like you're interested. So we're going to, this could be one of the reasons we're going to take you off our list. Email is also a great way to get them to go, no, I'm still interested in talking to you. I've just been busy. Let's chat. And that's a good example of a follow-up. Maybe you want to end with this if you ever choose to end. My personal philosophy, don't stop following up till you get a response. One way, if they say no, no problem. If they say yes, then you won already, and most times it takes a lot of follow-ups to get the yes. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Jared. Oh, before that, if there's any questions, I'd love to answer them right now.
Yeah, it looks like there was a couple. Here's one from Ryan, Kevin. For outbound sales teams, should walking through the close process happen during qualification or at the end of a sales presentation demo?
I think that the walking through the close process, it depends on how involved the process is. If the prospect expects the process to be short, but the process is really long, then you might want to talk about it during the qualifying process. But personally, I think the demo is a good time to talk about what their expectations should be and what your expectations should be.
Yeah, I completely agree. Jennifer had one more, and we'll save the others for the end if we can get the time. How do you get a customer to reveal their decision-making process when they're not forthcoming with that information? I think you touched on that a little bit. Any other tips or tricks to help elicit that information, Kevin?
So yes, use this line. Help me out here. When you're addressing the elephant in the room, the person's not telling you enough information. Address it. Just say, hey, help me out here. I get the sense that you don't find this conversation valuable. Is that true, or am I misreading this? This is not, and this might be a little uncomfortable to say, but 9 out of 10 times the person's going to go, oh, you know what? No, it's not that. I've just kind of been, preoccupied with something. Or they might say, oh, we're not sure if we're really interested. But now you've got a real conversation going. Now they're telling you the truth. So just say, help me out here. I feel like maybe this conversation isn't as productive as I'd hoped it would be. What can I do to change this here? What can I do to offer value? Or it doesn't feel like you might really be interested. Is that true, or am I misreading it? So those are the ways in which you can break through that wall and get a real human conversation going.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Kevin, for helping us qualify and follow up with some of our interested prospects. I'm going to jump in now and talk a little bit about how to close that deal, how to propose, follow up, and summarize some of that value, and get them to sign on the dotted line. So let's talk a little bit about sales content and how that relates to sales enablement. We threw in another word, in case you didn't notice on that one of those first slides, that said it's not just the tools and the processes and the practices, it's also the content. It makes a difference. Today's buyers are very, very different. They have a great website to go and check out. They might have some ebooks that your marketing team had put together, perhaps a white paper, some blog posts. They know what they're looking for. So as a sales rep, you have to be able to show them something that's a little bit different. So this is where your end of the funnel or bottom of the funnel sales content comes into play. So we have things like proposals, quotes, contracts, but you want to modularize that content. You want something that you can swap out. So for instance, if you have a proposal and you're selling to a medical solutions company, why would you include your case study of how you helped a company? It's irrelevant. That customer, that prospect doesn't care. You're not being a helpful salesperson. You need to be helpful. You need to have content that you can make relevant to your target buyers. So here's some overviews of what sales content in that proposal needs to look at like. On the left here, here's some table of contents that make sense to include in a sales proposal. Things like a cover letter where you address maybe the #1 pain point that you know they're having and how your solution is backed by some ROI to help solve that pain point. Pricing and ROI, give them a clear picture of what it means to start. You have some defense and social proof in there. That's where you can swap out case studies or testimonials. If there's any legal terms that you need to include them. You want them to understand what they're getting into, be forthcoming, forthright, and honest about it, so that way it unearths any potential objections. What we love to do is we actually have actionable tools at PandaDoc where proposal on the line, and we'll call it the PandaDoc close. In short, we'll walk through that proposal together and see if there's any gotchas live. We're looking to close the conversation. I often talk about what I refer to as the 6 gateways of sales. When you get to that last gateway, that's time, and the time to buy is always now if you've traversed the other gateways. When you're walking them through a proposal, you get to see where they're stuck. You get to understand, okay, well, we're actually stuck here. They're really debating because of this reason, and you can make those edits to the proposal and shoot it right back out. So one of the biggest problems, this is the age-old tale of you bring your reps leads and they say that the leads are weak. And of course the overarching nemesis manager wants to say that you're weak. Well, here's the problem. Even if you're doing everything that Justin says and everything that Kevin says and you have a great lead gen program, those efforts are valuable if you cannot, or vulnerable if you cannot deliver the same type of value as a sales rep to help close that deal, right? You want to empower your sales reps with great content to give them more than just what's available on the website. In short, this is where reps have the opportunity to give something to the client that they otherwise would not be able to consume or find on their own. So it's the responsibility of the organization to help prepare that collateral, or if you don't have a huge marketing team, to try and assemble as much as you can and deliver it to the prospective client as soon as you get off that call, or even better yet, while you're on that call, to walk them through that content. So what does some of that content need to say? Well, you can tailor that content to those buyer personas at each stage of the process. So, for instance, you might want to send them, after a first discovery call, a great case study, right? Perhaps that is the appropriate time to send that white paper on how company XYZ has delivered, Y return for this medical company, A. That's a great time to send an earlier piece of content like a case study or a white paper. As I've mentioned, for each persona. So for instance, it's not just the industry or the type of company. Are you selling to a VP of sales? Are you selling to finance? Are you selling to marketing? those personas actually deserve separate pieces of content. It's not just that, that you need to have content per industry. And then you should also have snippets of content for each product or service. So for instance, if your proposal includes everything that your product does and it drones on for pages and pages, or you have a 3-page executive summary, you're doing it wrong. The types of sales content that matters is what was relevant during that qualification process that Kevin talked about. So to break it down, you should have some folders of content that you can actually assemble on the fly. So that way, whenever you're building your proposal, it matches the stage of the buying process, it matches the persona that you're selling to, it matches each of the industries that they're in, and then it only talks about the product or service that was relevant to the customer that you were talking to. And if you do it right, so this is the Sales Enablement Stack webinar. If you're using a tool like LeadFuse to generate a lead, you're tracking and following up in a tool that's great like Close.io, and you're delivering them that proposal in a tool like PandaDoc, then you have the ability to actually follow up and close really quickly. What's even better is you can get something that's even more valuable than walking through on the phone with that proposal, is having the gift of perfect timing. So tools like LeadFuse, tools like Close, and even PandaDoc will tell you when someone opened one of your emails. There's also multiple tools available to tell you when your proposal is actually viewed, right? And even tracking how long they've stayed on each page. This gives you some great and deeper insight. For instance, if you sent that case study and you know it was never opened, you might leave a comment to bring it back to the top of their inbox. But if they're not engaging with that, more top of funnel sales content, you probably need to do some deeper qualification. Or at the end of the process, when you're delivering that closing proposal, let's say they check it out. Maybe you look at your cover letter and then bounce from the proposal. That's a great sign. It's also an even better time to do another follow-up. Give them a call. Hey, Joe, notice you opened my proposal. Is there any questions I could answer for you about that proposal? Have them walk through. Are you in front of your computer right now? Yeah, I noticed you just took a look at it. I wanted to see if we could maybe perhaps walk through it and see if there's any questions I could help answer while I got you on the line. These are great gifts to salespeople today, having that gift of perfect timing. Rule of thumb here at PandaDoc, we always have our reps follow up within 20 minutes of when someone looks at one of their proposals. It's a great kind of rule of thumb. If you have someone that's engaged with a piece of sales content, follow up within that first 20 minutes. It will help you because you're at the top of their mind and they're much more likely to actually pick up the phone or be responsive. So in short, we're kind of wrapping up on time. I was going to show you a quick lead to close demo, but we all offer free trials of the products. In short, you can generate a lead with a LeadFuse, right? Send outbound email sequences, which is all integrated with Close.io. So for tracking, qualifying, and following up and placing phone calls. And then there's also integration with PandaDoc, where you can create and deliver proposals seamlessly right from the CRM. So I'm going to go ahead and mention that we have a resources slide available here. So from LeadFuse, there's a couple links about canned spam and cold email best practices. We will be delivering this to everyone following the call. From Close.io, a couple of blog posts that were delivered and written by them on following up and qualifying. And here on the PandaDoc side, we have some proposal best practices in a resources section. So we'll make sure this presentation gets emailed out to everyone. And of course, we'll all have a special offer for all participants to follow. So questions. I want to see if there was any other questions that people had. And we also had a couple more that we'd written down that we wanted to answer earlier in the cycle. So I'll kind of direct traffic where I think it makes sense as we wrap up today. It looks like Andrew John asked, in a breakup email, should we not say that we won't email again? He said that I'm cool with the I don't want to blow up the inbox line. Kevin, Justin, what do you guys think about that?
I'll defer to Justin on this one. Okay, maybe not. I'll just
Justin.
Anyway. My take is I think that it's powerful when you just say no. I mean, when you say we're not going to email them again, because that creates a level of urgency that they're there's not going to be future follow-up. A lot of times people ignore emails because they expect you to follow up again. So if you're not, then that changes the dynamic. At least that's my take.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry about that. I was muted. I actually totally agree with that. Oftentimes, also from a cold email perspective, it generates a lot of responses. So again, going back to responses are gold, right? Like any response is a good response. So yeah, I mean, I do recommend mentioning that.
absolutely. David asked another question. So based on your opinion, what is the best converting call to action to start the conversation? Ask for a demo, ask for to schedule a call.
I say neither. I would typically recommend a different sort of call to action. So you'll notice, I kind of use different questions to kind of close out the email. But one also that I've tried is that's worked really well, at least in my case, is what particular target markets are you going after, or who makes a good customer for you. And so with that, it's easy to respond to that without committing to anything just yet. And then once they respond, I can kind of expand on the value and kind of dive a little deeper. But that's my recommendation.
So the call to action, Justin, you would recommend actually being some sort of question to elicit more information from that prospect to get them engaged.
Absolutely, without needing them to commit to something, right? Not just yet. Again, your goal is to just get a response, start the conversation. So yeah, I don't recommend saying, okay, hey, you don't know me, but click this calendar and book a demo, right? Like, I mean, you want to kind of just start the conversation and get that going. And again, having them respond is obviously it's good for that future deliverability as well.
Kevin, what are your thoughts whenever you get a conversation going, right? And let's say you're having trouble getting them on the line. So let's say they're answering some emails. This happens to all of us. They're going back and forth via email. And at this point, you're ready for the phone call as a rep. You're like, all right, I think I've responded to this guy 7 times, but he's not getting on the line. What should you do? How can you get them on the phone?
That's a good one. So at least personally, I'm a lot stronger on the phone than I am on email. So for me, I just pitch them on why we should have a call. So first, I don't need their permission to call them. Normally, if I want to talk to them on the phone, I'm just going to pick up the phone and call them anyway. And then if they're not answering the call and then we're still exchanging emails, say, hey, let's hop on a call. I have a bunch of questions that I need with some follow-ups that I want to go over the phone with you. And because it's easier to ask these questions and get answers and then follow up with additional questions than to do it over email. Typically, most people just agree at that point. Some people will say, hey, I prefer to do this via email for XYZ reason. You can't win them all, but that's worked for me.
I completely agree. Any other questions, guys? It looks like we're wrapping up here. So quick couple housekeeping items. So thank you so much to the dozens and dozens of attendees. We had a great turnout today who showed up to kind of learn the cold to close process utilizing the best practices from LeadFuse, Close.io, and PandaDoc. Thank you, Justin, for joining, Kevin, and the teams of all 3 companies for putting together the logistics here. We'll also be sending out, like I said, a recording of this webinar, the deck, so you get the links to those resources in a follow-up. So any other last-minute questions, or we can wrap up today? Thanks for the accolades as well, Ellis. Looks like some people got some value out of this. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up and conclude our Sales Enablement Stack webinar. Thanks so much, guys. Go out there, crush it, follow up, and close.